Does this look familiar? How about this? If you're around the same age as me, then chances are this charming creature sparks a nostalgic kick in your tum-tum, as it was certainly a prevalent adversary in cliché kung fu spin-offs on TV at the time. Now, monsters and supernatural beings have never really spooked me. Even as a child I found them more fascinating than scary. But there was always something I found very unnerving about the antagonist in the 1986 film Big Trouble in Little China, Lo Pan. That one would really get to me. He's terrifying. His appearance, abilities and demeanour shares a lot of commonalities with today's subject, and I feel the portrayal might have been inspired by some of these legends. Turns out I was right to be afraid, as this entity can harbour some serious power given the chance. Let's look into the lore surrounding the Jiangshi. Also known as a Chinese hopping vampire, this reanimated corpse is a terrifying premise in Chinese mythology. Jiangshi made their inaugural appearance in Chinese literature in the 1790s during the Qing dynasty. Portrayed as a rigid cadaver, its aim is to prey upon living beings to absorb their energy, or qi, typically under the cover of night. The English word zombie is translated as Jiangshi in Chinese. This translation has led to some confusion, as the two entities are fundamentally different. Further blurring the lines, certain traits are shared with the Western concept of a vampire, such as fear of sunlight, a propensity to return to coffins or dark spaces during the daytime, and the act of draining life force from victims. It's important to recognise that neither term should be interpreted literally, as zombies and vampires represent separate mythological beings with unique origins. Bad Google. The appearance of a Jiangshi can vary widely depending on the state of the corpse. In cases of recent death, their appearance may be somewhat unremarkable, just a plain old dead person, boring. Things really start heating up though once they hit the advanced stages of decay and exhibit rotting flesh and rigor mortis. Yay! The Chinese character Zhang in Jiangshi translates to hard or stiff, don't laugh, indicating the rigidity of their bodies. Legend holds that Jiangshi are so rigid that they can't even flex their limbs or torso, necessitating the movement through hopping whilst keeping their arms outstretched for mobility. After all my years when reading this, it finally clicked that that's why your classic undead sort of slovenly stumble around, arms outstretched. It's the rigor mortis. In popular culture, Jiangshi are often depicted with a paper talisman affixed to their foreheads, bearing a sealing spell symbolising that they have been reanimated by a Taoist priest. Taoist priests use this talisman to exert control over Jiangshi. This method not only serves to restrain the Jiangshi, but also proves effective in halting their movements. However, should the talisman become dislodged, the priest loses their influence over the Jiangshi, allowing these creatures to roam freely and without restraint. They're draped in a uniform, a coat-like robe with a distinctive round-top, tall-rimmed hat reminiscent of Qing dynasty mandarins. Jiangshi are described as having long white hair covering their heads with fingernails that have continued to grow even after death, and an elongated, dexterous tongue. Now, as sexy as this sounds, it's spoiled by their greenish-white complexion. One theory suggests this may stem from the growth of fungi or mould on corpses, which is something for us all to look forward to. But just how do these dearly departed end up with such a morbid fate? It can actually be explained through science. Oh, no, wait, it's magic. Jiangshi can spring into being in a myriad of different ways, such as a soul failing to leave the body due to an improper death, the dead person not being buried even after a funeral, lazy, a corpse being struck by a bolt of lightning, or a pregnant cat jumping across the coffin. Explain that one, science. If you have a penchant for necromancy, you could use supernatural arts to resurrect the dead. Or if you're already dead and floating around in the ethereal realms just looking for a fresh crib, you could exact some good old spiritual possession on a fresh corpse. Now, according to Chinese philosophy and traditional beliefs, a person's essence is governed by both a hun, a spiritual and ethereal yang soul that departs the body upon death, and a po, a corporeal yin soul that remains with the deceased's corpse. While a person's hun is virtuous and intelligent, the po tends to carry negative traits. Upon death, the hun vacates the body, leaving the po to exert control, leading to the transformation of the deceased into a Jiangshi. During the era of the Qing dynasty, you might be surprised to learn there was no such thing as remote working. Many individuals migrated hundreds of miles for employment or to fight in wars, leaving their hometowns behind. If they met their demise in one way or another, their families were unable to bring their bodies back home, nor were the fallen afforded proper burial rites on the battlefield. Upon their passing, the tradition dictated that their bodies be returned to their place of origin to assuage the potential homesickness of their souls, thus enlisting the services of a Taoist priest to engage in the folk practice of transporting a corpse over 1,000 li. It's not very catchy, but it's the equivalent to approximately 500 kilometres or 300 miles. That is a long walk. Think of that job when you're having a bad day at work. Now, if a family couldn't afford conventional transportation, they might save some pennies by engaging in the services of someone who possessed knowledge of necromancy. What could go wrong? This individual was believed to possess the ability to magically bind the wrists, ankles and knees of the deceased, compelling them into an upright position. With the aid of a long stick, the corpse driver would prod and poke the corpses, seemingly imbuing them with the ability to hop home under their own volition. I don't really know why this was cheaper, as it actually sounds like more hassle than just popping them in a wheelbarrow for the journey. The transportation of corpses occurred exclusively at night, with the priests ringing bells along the journey to signal their presence to others nearby, as it was widely believed that setting eyes on the Jiangshi could bring terrible misfortune. Now, you're all sensible folks, you know there must be an explanation around this rumour of corpses hopping 300 miles home. Well, it turns out there is, and spoiler, it's not magic. To facilitate the transportation of corpses over long distances, a distinctive method was employed. The deceased would be arranged upright in a single file and secured to lengthy bamboo rods positioned at their sides. Two individuals, one positioned at the front and the other at the rear, would then hoist the rods onto their shoulders and proceed to walk in a sort of morbid conga line. As the bamboo flexed rhythmically up and down, the corpses would sway and bounce, giving the illusion of hopping when observed from a distance. People refrained from closely examining the spectacle, partly because of the taboo surrounding gazing upon the Jiangshi. It's speculated they encouraged the Jiangshi legend as well to make their journey easier. After all, nobody wanted to bother a centipede of chi-sucking undead. Believe it or not, Jiangshi are a little bit like Pokemon. They start off relatively benign, but over time they develop distinct levels of menace, each progressively more formidable than the last. Here's a comprehensive guide to what you can expect as your Jiangshi levels up. We'll start off with your bog-standard purple Jiangshi. This refers to a Jiangshi created from a person that has freshly bit the dust. These types of Jiangshi have purple skin and are unable to move of their own accord, and are therefore considered an incomplete type of Jiangshi. After a few days, it can get a bit restless and develop into a wandering Jiangshi, moving with the moon as it traverses the sky rather than staying in a fixed place. Before long, they really start coming into their own and become a white Jiangshi. They have pale skin, and though they can hop, they're extremely sluggish. If you're going to take one on, this is the time to do it, because they're much easier to manage and remarkably susceptible to harm. They're afraid of light, fire, water, dogs, and even chickens. Who's scared of chickens? Apparently, all you have to do is push them over, and that's enough to incapacitate them. Bear that in mind for later. After a couple of years spent feeding on the rubbish chi of ox and sheep, if they manage to stay on their feet, they start ramping up and learning some new abilities. At this point, they're looking pretty grim and have evolved into a green Jiangshi. They secrete a green gas and are much more adept to hopping than their counterpart. They're not afraid of people or animals, however, they are still afraid of the sun and fire. They still remain cautious around humans, preferring to avoid direct interaction and only attempting to drain their life force while they're asleep. A way to avoid the creature is to hold your breath, as the Jiangshi is blind and it's the sound of the victim's breathing that seals their fate. It's hard to do when you're asleep though. Once 5 years have passed, they become copper-skinned and iron-boned, and hair sprouts on their bodies. These hairy Jiangshi are extremely agile and can jump to the top of houses and trees with ease as if taking flight, and are no longer afraid of normal fire or sun. It's at this point you need to start worrying. After 100 years, you're really in trouble as they become flying Jiangshi. Not only are they no longer afraid of sunlight, but they also no longer fear mortal weapons like swords and spears. They've also learned how to cast spells. The average Taoist monk will be unable to defeat a flying Jiangshi. With their newfound prowess, flying Jiangshi stalk their prey effortlessly, extracting life essence without leaving a trace. Now, thankfully the timescales get a little wacky here, so I don't think you need to worry just yet, but after 1,000 years they are virtually unstoppable. The flying Jiangshi achieves an elevated status akin to a demigod, and is recognised as a Ba or drought demon. In this form, the Ba possesses the ability to shapeshift into various creatures, induce droughts, and unleash plagues upon large populations. Legends suggest that Ba may even ascend to the heavens to beat up celestial dragons, the big bullies. You'd think beating up celestial dragons is the point where they'd have really min-maxed their craft and could rest on their laurels. Nope. They have a rumoured final form, tens of thousands of years in the making, its ultimate metamorphosis ascending to become the Demon King. As the Demon King, it attains near godlike authority, is capable of challenging even the highest celestial deities and wields virtually boundless powers. So if you see a white one, you should probably push it over. If you do have a Jiangshi hassling you for your qi and you don't want to get your hands dirty though, don't worry. There's a handy list of alternative methods to dispatch our stinky undead pests before they turn into a destroyer of worlds, or at least scare them off for a bit. Not surprisingly, Jiangshi are very self-conscious and are said to be terrified of their own reflections. Don't really blame them. Bonus points if the mirror frame is made from the wood of a peach tree, as according to Chinese literature, peach is the essence of the 5 elements. It can subjugate evil auras and deter evil spirits. If you've got time, you could train a rooster. Make it call on command, as they will withdraw upon hearing the signifier of the sunrise. Dropping a bag of coins can cause the Jiangshi to count the coins. I'm not sure what you'd do afterwards, but it might give you time to subtly nail 7 jujube seeds into the acupuncture points on its back, another suggested dispatch method. For a corpse, they have very specific dietary requirements, so if you take one out for dinner, be sure to avoid sour wine, glutinous rice, azuki beans and black dog's blood, all things used to deter a Jiangshi. There's also a few signs, sigils and divination texts you could employ if you want to go for the more dramatic dispelling. Or, and I personally think this is the most reliable, set it on fire. Definitely just set it on fire. My favourite method though has to be one tied to the Feng Shui tradition. Set up a piece of wood 15 centimetres high along the width of your door and they just can't get over it. Just like a stuck NPC unable to traverse this tiny little barrier. Well, there we have it. You're fully equipped and ready to go full Van Helsing on any Jiangshi troublemakers. Now, I hope this or any other videos don't come across as disrespectful to certain beliefs or traditions. It's really not my intention. I just want to try and make it fun to learn about, especially when it's actually a pretty morbid subject matter when you strip it back. The most interesting thing I found when researching this was the ties to my own cultural sphere of understanding when it comes to things like vampires and zombies and undead folklore. It's fascinating that these entities share so many traits, even when geographically they're worlds apart. Like, how do these legends dissipate across the world into various cultures with their own interpretations in a time when everyone was fairly cut off from one another? Unless they're just real. If you enjoyed this video, please help me out and like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, and stay tuned for more insights into the supernatural.